That's good.
So next up we have Ricky's Pinot Noir from here, and you know, I personally feel that it's really cool to have Ricky's wines here today because it's such an interesting interpretation of a slightly more good-forward style, slightly lighter style than the rest of us have done here.
So basically, under the Labyrinth program, we do 4 wines, 3 of which are 100% Presquile, so obviously I have to make a choice as to which wines I'm going to pour. So just for the record, I do the 100% whole cluster and 50% new oak from one of the blocks on the very front of the property. It's called Pinots. I do a clone 667. I do that in neutral oak, and that comes off 3A, which is when you're driving up towards the winery, there's a split in the road, and I'm literally on within 100 yards of the split in the road, fork in the road. And then of course I do the Presqu'ile, which is actually a combination of the 667 and the 777. And it's kind of unique because it's majority of the 777 was planted early, so it was planted I think 2001? 99. Yeah. So the vineyards, and it's 14th, 15th year. Uniquely, it's at the very bottom of the hill. So obviously, and this is what I like about this property. You've got pure sand, which Kevin and I like to describe as sand music, which is a great here. But it's pure sand. It's almost like you can roll an ankle because the sand is so fluid. And that's obviously what the Chardonnay is. But then I have a portion of Pinot, 667, about half an hour hill, and then obviously right at the very bottom, there's a lot more clay profile in the soil, which gives me more of a depth. So in this particular wine, I wanted the depth, but I wanted the fragrance at 667. Either's right, I do a little right, but not much. I mean, we're talking a period of a week. Difference between, but that can make a difference too. A period of time we have 73-degree day, and then all of a sudden it spikes to 100 degrees. We push the sugars from 24 to 25 very quickly. And then you can also change your flavor profile. So for the Labyrinth program, I usually look at a flavour spectrum of raspberry, cranberry, strawberry, rhubarb. That's kind of the range I like. But I don't want to go with the dark side, which is kind of more plum, prune, black cherry. But I don't want to go too early, which is kind of more watermelon, almost like a ripe raspberry, ripe red cherry. So I'm kind of aiming that sort of range. That's what I'm looking for. So when I'm in the vineyard, I'm specifically looking for a flavour. Numbers don't matter. So it's all about the flavour. So I want consistency every year. So for any reason, all the scientific equipment in the world just disappeared. I can still rely on my colour for flavour profile. And that's kind of what I pick on.
That's scary.
This is a New Zealand telling you this. Yeah. So basically, it's a little more personal. And I've had 17 years making wines in this valley, so I'm fairly knowledgeable on it. And obviously, and just another quick thing, the 3 of us, I'm not sure that Ernst, but we actually have acreage contracts here. So we're not just like getting a ton of grapes like a lot of wineries do. We actually have a very strong interaction with the vineyard manager here, Jim Stolberg. So we actually dial in exactly what we want with the vineyard. And that also creates kind of a uniqueness to our styles as well. I mean, like for instance, we'll drop morning roads to get more light into the vines early, and we'll leave the afternoon vines. We all have different protocols about when we drop fruit. So if we see some overhang or bunches that touch each other, or a lot of intense clusters in one area, we'll drop those. And each of us have a different interpretation of when that will happen. So we kind of keep Jim pretty busy. He's right on the phone, just gets his texts, he gets a bunch of texts from all 3 of us. So we're all talking. We're all close. We party hard together. We drink together. We harvest together. Kevin and I actually, our winery is literally here to the waterway. That's how close we both are. So we're pretty much in each other's mindsets all the time during harvest. We're trading information. And uniquely enough, I have the block, when you drive in the driveway, I have the 1 acre block on the left-hand side, just behind the sign. And there's I guess there's a divider road, and then there's 4 Kevins. So literally Kevin and I both get 777 clone off block 1A. So it's a real friendly competition. I love it. It's exciting.
Friendly,
yeah. Drinking together influences the quality of wine. I agree. I think it's the foundation for all philosophies at the end of the day. Just quickly, typically, I take about a week out to do that. There's about 30% new oak in this. I do have a program where I only use 1 barrel. I don't use mixed new oak. I only use LFK.
I do have older barrels which I'll transfer, but historically going forward, I'm going to stay with 21 Cooper. I think to me, it's like if you keep all your variables constant and just have the fruit, the vineyard as being, obviously I have a technique, I use the same oak, the same yeast, I age it for the same period of time, I keep everything dialed in, correct, no changes, then what you see is the profile of the vineyard. And that's what happens when I use it to source fruit from other vineyards as well. I keep that same protocol, so when you taste the wine side by side, you go, oh yeah, it's Presqu'ile, perfectly set up, that's right. The wine spends 18 months in barrel on gross lees. I don't rake the wine until the finished day I need to bottle it. Unfiltered, unfined.
What do you think, obviously, being riper, the length of the growing season here, they harvest strawberries 3 times a year in this place, where they only do it twice in the rest of the world. So it shows you how long the growing season is here. What do you feel, you're extending that hang time a little longer, not much, but a little bit. What do you feel that really brings to the wine's tannic structure, like that extra little bit of hang time on the texture of the palate?
So also part of the technique is to actually age the skins for a long period. I have a long post soak. And that's basically the period of time when the grapes are already got, when the wine is basically gone dry, there's no residual sugar left in the wine. My wife basically has a protocol of pressing it immediately, so she gets it off skins immediately. Whereas I like to leave it on skins for up to a week, maybe 2 weeks. I'm looking for a change. I'm looking for a slipperiness in the mouth, and that's basically the alcohol leaching potassium out of the skins. And it's really a taste day by day by day by day, and then basically I know that's it, I've got to hide now. So I tend to create wines with a lot more slip, and that comes from the actual extended maceration on the skins after fermentation.
If you extend the skin macerate, you also wear shorts every day. You have to have good cloth also for that. Extended skin maceration is something we haven't tried here much, but it's kind of an interesting idea, I think, for getting a little bit more softness, a little bit more body to the wine. It's also risky.
It is risky.
Because there's no more...
If you miss that window,
miss
that window and go to a point where you're going to start fighting, and then you have to adapt less savoury winemaking techniques to kind of bring back the balance. So,
you two guys down there do any extended skin maceration with Peter?
I press on when temperatures got right in the 60s. I wait for it to cool down.
Urki?
No, I press before it's dry.
you press before.
What do you think that does compared to the extended skin maceration?
Well, I kind of like to manage that. As your fermentation goes, your alcohol goes up, and alcohol is a solvent. So the higher your alcohol goes, the more you're going to extract from the skins, and if you're doing whole cluster. So I try to kind of manage the extraction of the tannin from the stems at the end to where I want to get it off the stems, just to I think to make a softer wine, and then have the fermentation finish in barrel. It's a reductive environment. There's 50 different ways to go about this. Not one of them is wrong.
Just kill the cat, but went out and do it.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, Ernst, back you started the tasting. You might as well finish it off with a little bit of your Pinot Noir.
Okay, so I have a little block here on the newer planting. It's clone 667 on its own root. It's just under an acre. In 2012, I basically, the yield was very low. I got about 1.3 tons off that little block. Clusters tend to be very small on the whole ranch. I did about 20 to 30% whole cluster on this. When I work with Pinot Noir like this, it's obviously very delicate. I think you need to find ways to express the site, and my take on it was around 20 to 30% whole cluster. Choose a cooper that really respects the fruit, that doesn't overpower, that's more texture building, but not as much aromatics. So this was a 6-day cold soak where the fruit sits in a cold room under a reductive environment, so there's no oxygen. And what that does, it really intensifies the the aromatics and the flavors of the wine and also the color, because there's no alcohol involved. And then the fermentation started natural. I did inoculate. It spent about, say about 14 days on the skins total, and pressed off, basket pressed. Having it being such a small little lot, you know, you can employ a lot of gravity, so you can lift up the tank and gravity it into another tank, and lift up the tank and gravity into the barrel. I really work reductively with my Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir, so I try and keep oxygen away, just to really protect those very delicate fruit and aromatics. And so, as I said, the cooper was a very forgiving cooper as far as respecting the fruit, and spent on the time on the leaf for about 10 months, and same as Kevin, yeah, bottled it before harvest. Just basically pulled it out of the barrel, let it settle for a week, and bottled it. Really trying to capture the prettiness and that bright red fruit. You know, I think with all these Pinots, you can see that there's an element of spiciness to the wine. And the winemaking decisions are basically made to respect that. It's very delicate, it's very pretty. You know, so I think, you know, going to the extreme to really capture as much of the site is kind of the key.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think obviously the uniqueness of the site is really why the flatter the land, more boring the flavor profile. So having all this undulation and kind of little sites to play with, I think obviously with each of different wine really creates for a very interesting lineup. Just to add on to what Ernst said about cold, so a lot of things that are in wine only dissolve in water, and a lot of things that are in wine only dissolve in alcohol, which is why cold soak is so important for lighter colored wines like Nebbiolo, Pinot Noir, which is kind of a standard procedure out here in the valley, but essentially you just throw the grapes on these tanks, turn the cooling on, and you know, let all of those things that dissolve in water become abundant enough and high enough concentrations to be able, for instance, carry color through the wine. It's very important for the color stabilization of the wine, which in Pinot Noir is not as important, but definitely see-through Pinot Noir is not exactly something people are looking for. What do you guys feel personally, each of you, I'll start with you, Ricky, are a really good interpretation of that common thread between our wines and what Presquile's property really brings to the table?
They're all similar. There's no doubt about it. Kevin's has a little mint character, which is really highlighted to me, and he really promotes that character in Presquile. But there is a stylistically fruit-driven parallel here. I mean, and it's not like a Solomon Hills. I mean, people are probably familiar with Solomon Hills Vineyard. It's not like the north side Cambria block, the Unicito. It's almost a high note, almost a black cherry liqueur. I think common with those wines. It's almost it's the red bordering on the red black fruit program. I mean, this is even more so. That's kind of how I see this. It's kind of all these wines it's almost pushing it for red black fruit zone.
These are all good gallop and whole on all these.
Yeah.
What percentage is your Presquile whole cluster?
Like I don't weigh it out, so I just kind of eyeball it. But I just kind of, I have these, they're called monster bins, and so I eyeball what I think is 25% of the fork into it, and lightly tread it barefoot so you don't break up all the berries, and then do a combination of whole berries on top and berries that are broken. So with that you have kind of fermentation that takes place inside the berry, which gives you more fruity character, and then you have the whole cluster that's at the bottom. You don't want to over macerate that because then the wine can become a little bit too tannic. So I'd say about 20 to 25.
Okay.
Yeah. It might be 15. I don't know. Yeah.
Like it up.
You get off those stems here, the almond is wonderful. A lot of vineyards don't have that, and they end up with green bean flavors and almost like a vermouth tannin It is not good. This vineyard, it's perfect for a Pinot would be that. And it's interesting because yours is close to 100%, and his is 20%, but you still have that wonderful spice and complexity just riding through it.